Thanks for tuning into the Showdown. I'm John Friedberg. My guest this week is 21-year-old online poker high-stakes sensation Jungleman Dan Cates. Also, Kathy Liebert publicly calls out Howard Lederer about how good or bad he is at poker. And last and certainly not least, Erik Seidel is on a sick heater in 2011, winning about $4 million so far. But does he deserve all the recognition that he's been getting for it? You're watching the Showdown. Stick around. Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Showdown. I have a much anticipated guest today on the show, and that is Jungleman Dan Cates. I have been talking to Dan for about a month now, trying to get him on the show. Finally, he has time in his schedule to come out and make an appearance. So I'm really excited to have him on and ask him all sorts of questions. I'm going to skip the vote down segment today where I asked you about poker on TV, and we're going to get to that next week. So right now I'm going to head straight into the Twitter lowdown. There was a spark of controversy last week when Kathy Liebert publicly stated that she felt that Howard Lederer, without having any involvement with Full Tilt Poker, would be bust because his poker game basically sucks. And, you know, although I would have to say it's probably true that Howard's skills are not what they used to be, because he's doing so much with Full Tilt Poker and he's running a business and making money off it. But because of that, you can't really judge him on that because he's got so many other things going on. If he was solely relying on poker as income, he would probably have kept up with the game much better than Kathy thinks, and realistically, he probably has. So that's really all I have to say on that. In other news, Erik Seidel won the NBC Heads Up tournament. We all know about that. Erik has now won about $4 million in 2011. Sick run, yes. But does he deserve all this recognition he's getting? In my opinion, not necessarily. I think that, yes, he's won a few tournaments, but these are really small tournaments. They just happen to have high buy-ins, and therefore his payouts are really big. I think the NBC Heads Up tournament was the most impressive, but the $250,000 buy-in where he wins, $1.5 million, and I might have the numbers wrong, but you understand what I'm saying. If the buy-ins were smaller in these two-table tournaments that he was winning, nobody would even notice it. But because these are such big buy-ins, that inflates the prize pools, and therefore it seems that he's won so much money, which is great. But again, in closing, I don't think it's that impressive. I would like to see Erik win, some bigger events. I do think he's one of the best players in the world, but I don't think winning these small tournaments is necessarily as impressive as it looks on paper when he has $4 million in earnings this year. All right, with that behind us, I have a lot of questions for my guest today, so let me bring him on now, Mr. Jungleman Dan Cates. Jungleman Dan Cates, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know my audience is thrilled to see you here. You have really made a huge name for yourself in poker, starting out from the small stakes all the way up now playing in, against the toughest players in the world and nosebleed stakes and winning a ton of money. What has the journey been for you? I mean, what has it been like going from, losing at the penny stakes to now crushing the highest stakes you can play?
Well, it's definitely been interesting. I can't say that it's been amazing, because it was a gradual process. I didn't just one day wake up beating nosebleeds. I went from, not being a losing player to being an okay player, and then being a winning player, and then moving up in stakes. Then gradually, eventually, I came to play the nosebleeds and win.
So, I've read a little bit about you, and I've read some of your blog posts, and you talk a lot about frame of mind and focusing on the positive things and, reviewing your play and correcting making adjustments to any mistakes that you might have made.
Uh-huh.
Would you consider that to be the most important part of becoming a better poker player?
Well, I think those are skills in general, skills that are useful in general for any kind of success in anything. I think those before, like, what's the word? Like raw poker skills, like whether to bet or check raise here. Those are skills that are necessary to be ultimately good at poker, and pretty much anything. And they're the most fundamental things, pretty much.
So you've made a ton of money playing in cash games, predominantly heads up. How important is it to you to win a World Series bracelet? Do you have any desire to prove yourself in the tournament scene?
I do, but I'd say that winning a bracelet wouldn't say that much about, like, aptitude at tournaments, because there's a ton of variance in tournaments. That by in and of itself is not, like, that meaningful. Although I do want a bracelet, like a decent amount, but I could certainly live without it.
So just to add on to the resume, but
yeah.
I mean, I would think that when you're playing the stakes that you play, to buy into even like a $5,000 tournament and grind for 12 hours in day one, 8 hours in day two or something, to bust and cash for 20, 30,000, to you must seem like a total waste of time.
Sometimes it does.
I mean, that's the same case for anybody, I guess, but most of us don't feel like winning 20,000 is a waste of time, because for you, putting at 5,000 in a tournament is like your big blind sometimes, or like a button steal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I just think about the win most of the time, and just think about winning, how meaningful that would be. Like, I still enjoy winning $100,000 or 160 or whatever the first place would be.
Right. So you're only 21 years old, and like I keep saying, you're playing for hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars basically. When you're playing, do you think about the amount of money that's at stake, or are you just playing a game and winning a ton of money is just a byproduct of that?
I think it's closer to the latter. When I play, I sort of think of it, I don't think, oh man, I could have bought a house with that money, until maybe after. I think of it more of as points, and if I'm winning, I'm winning points. If I'm losing points. And points, I care a lot about winning and losing points. It's pretty much how it works. The money isn't like, it's a little bit detached. It's not.
It seems like if you focus too much on the money, you might chicken out on some bluffs or some calls. Mm-hmm. If you really look at it like, wow, that's, I could either call this $50,000 river bet, or I could fold and save that money and buy a Mercedes later today. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on bankroll management? Are you pretty good with your money, or have you just really taken big shots and been successful at doing that? In other words, have you felt like you've been significantly rolled for all the games that you've played, or have you taken shots and been successful? For
the most part, I've been pretty rolled. I've taken a few shots that have been like a little bit risky. I never do anything like there's a high chance of me going broke. I always try to give myself some room to recover if I lose a lot of money.
Okay.
In almost every circumstance. Maybe a few outliers here and there, but.
So what about the money that you have won? I mean, now you have a poker bankroll. You obviously have some money, a fair amount of money that you've won. What do you do with your money that you're not using on the tables? Are you investing it, spending it at, strip clubs? What kind of things do you do with your money?
I buy a few luxuries every now and then, but I don't spend that much, I'd say. I spend it traveling. That's one thing that I've been spending it on lately. I've been looking into investing. I haven't invested that much yet, but I'm definitely planning on it after I get a few things settled out. I've been also looking into charities. At some point, I will donate a lot of money to charity, or at least I plan on doing that. That's pretty much it. I mean, I want to live a good life, but I don't care too much about like spending a truckload of money for too much extra stuff.
Now let's talk about the games that you play. I've looked through your results online, which obviously those aren't always very accurate, but it appears that you win a lot in heads up, but you don't do quite as well in 6-max.
Mm-hmm.
Are you predominantly a heads-up player, or do you consider yourself, equally as good across the board in all sorts of games?
Well, I'm definitely not equally as good at other games as I am at heads up, I'd imagine. I would definitely say I'm better at heads up than, say, 6-max, and especially full ring. And that's partly because I think that win rates are higher heads up. I generally prefer to play that rather than 6-max or full ring. But I do know how to play the other games as well. And if heads up's not running, I might play those games if they're good. Another reason why I play mostly heads up is because I feel that the heads up games tend to be better than the 6-max games and full ring games. In addition, there's more potential for an edge. So there's just more money in several different ways in heads up, I think.